talking about 15-passenger van safety. Our interest is how we're going to go from this vehicle to this vehicle and bypass that step. This is what's occurring with 15-passenger vans. This is why we're doing this safety awareness program. This is not a training session that we're going to take you at and let you drive 15-passenger vans and see if you can wreck them. We're going to try to prevent that.
Vehicle characteristics. Passenger cars and vans have some distinguishable differences. A van is higher and wider when loaded and will weigh substantially more than a passenger car. Another difference is the size and location of blind spots. Blind spots in vans are usually larger due to the length and width of the vehicle. Because vans are higher, they tend to have a higher center of gravity and a greater probability to tip. As a result, you must slow down more in curves. In vans, you must watch your overhead and side clearances. Also, with extended van, you must allow for long overhangs in the back. Parking tends to be more difficult due to the size. Vehicle inspection. All vehicles need to be inspected before they hit the road. Your inspection begins as you approach the van. Look underneath for any loose parts or leaking fluids. Get into the van and turn on the exterior lights. Check that all of the lights are working properly. Begin checking the engine compartment by looking at all fluid levels. Inspect all hoses and cable connections for excess wear. Check the condition and pressure of all tires. The best way is to use a gauge to check the tire pressure and a gauge to check the tread depth. Inside the van, turn the key on in the ignition and check all interior gauges, indicator lights, windshield wipers, and signals. Make sure the seat is properly adjusted to fit you. You should be able to reach the steering wheel and all other controls without reaching. Inspect the front seat area. It should be clear of any loose items. Make sure all interior lighting works. Check all safety belts. Make sure they are accessible and not damaged. Before moving the van, adjust the steering wheel so it's directed towards your chest and not your face. Also, put on your safety belt. Adjust mirrors to reduce blind spots. You should be able to see the side of the van and the edge of your left and right mirror. Adjust the inside mirror to get the maximum view out of the back. You should never drive while under the influence. An important driving skill is maintaining a cushion of safety around the van. You should try to keep the front, both sides, and the rear clear from other traffic. This will allow you to compensate for hazards created by other vehicles on the highway.
The mirrors should be adjusted so that on the right side mirror, you have to lean out of your seat almost to the middle and look in the mirror, and then you should be able just to see the side of your vehicle. Anything closer than that, it narrows down your angle. So if you have it so that when you look out like that, you can just barely see the side of your vehicle. And you can check that when you're on the road. Actually, if you put that mirror out that far, when you look in your rear view mirror, look at a vehicle. When you lose it in your rear view mirror, you should pick it up in your side mirror. When you lose it in your side mirror, you should pick it up with your peripheral vision. That way the mirrors are right. On the left mirror, you should put your head against the window and look in the mirror before you can see the side of your vehicle. That spreads that mirror out and gives you a better cushion of safety. We're talking about the cushion of safety because it's very important in a 15-passenger van that you have this maneuvering room. The thing that I teach in classes that I do on defensive driving, it's easier to steer around something than it is to stop. So what basically we teach is if something falls out of a truck or is in the middle of the road, steer around it. You can't do that with a 15-passenger van that's loaded because they are so top-heavy. At 45 miles an hour, if you make that emergency move, 75% of the time you'll roll it. And when you start the roll, you can't ever get it back. That's why we don't do the driving. Joey Chitwood did some training with his experienced stunt car drivers. And they took 15-passenger vans and put the wreck dummies in them and all that stuff and tried the J maneuvers at 45 miles an hour, and inevitably they always tipped them up. They were smart enough that they had little outrigger tires on the side of it, like kids' bicycles with training tires, to keep it from rolling. And they said, even with their experience, once it started to go up on two wheels, you couldn't bring it back. So that's what you're driving. Something that is top heavy, and that's why we're doing this class. Let's do some accident facts. 25% of all driving accidents are the result of speed. 70% of the driving accidents occur within 25 miles of home. Most of us know somebody who's been killed in a car wreck. This 25% of excessive speed is for a 15-passenger van a lot less than a passenger car. This is probably 65 miles an hour maximum speed on a 15-passenger van. And at times, that's excessive. Talk about that. You should fill the front seats first when you're filling up the 15 passengers. Bring everybody to the front. Because when we fill them up, the more people we put in the back and the more weight we put in the back, it squats down the vehicle and it increases the height of the center of gravity. We'll talk about that some more. What we're recommending is that you take that rear seat out. So we've got, in essence, an 11-passenger van. If you're getting a vehicle from the UK Motor Pool, you have to, when you register or when you ask for it, you have to tell them then that you want to fit the rear seat out, because James and them won't take it out if you just show up and say, I need the seat out. And they're not hard to get out, but you need to tell them beforehand. This is since 1982. Now, we're talking about 15-passenger vans. We're not talking about lightweight vehicle trucks. This is just passenger van. There have been rollovers everywhere except, it appears, South Dakota. It's flat, and then you turn them over there. But all across the eastern seaboard and everywhere else. I don't know about Hawaii. This is just 15-passenger vans. According to government statistics, 440 people have been killed since 1990. And we can't go back farther than that because they didn't keep records back then as to whether it was a 15-passenger van or not. 440. And here's some of the examples. In St. Louis, in January 2003, an F1 or 350, and we'll pick on Ford basically because there's more Fords out than anything else. They are the only ones still selling and manufacturing a 15-passenger van as we know it. General Motors quit making them and are making now a new one on that second slide we looked at with the high top and the side door and all that. It's more like a bus, only it's still a 15-passenger van. You don't need a CDL to drive it. Chrysler has quit making theirs, but Mercedes-Benz has a good one, and you can see them around Brown. UPS is using them as cargo vans. And they have a configuration in them for a 15-passenger seat. They got dual rear wheels. They're made to be a passenger vehicle. In September 2002, loggers from Honduras were killed in Maine when a 2002 Dodge 15-passenger slipped off of a one-lane bridge. In the Bay Area, California, a driver in a Ford tried to miss a vehicle that was parking and turned over. Now, this was not at excessive speeds. And in July, a van carrying 6 cheerleaders rolled over near Birmingham, Alabama. 5 of the passengers were ejected, 2 were killed. All of them were injured. And this was in Oregon. Firefighters fighting a wildfire. Their van wrecked. And in 2000, there were 4 separate crashes involving athletic teams, injuring 5 and killing 5 and injuring 5 others. Guess who drives 15-passenger vans? Universities, colleges, daycare centers, and kindergartens, and churches. They're not allowed to be used by any school system K through 12 because they're not a safe vehicle. They don't meet the National Highway Traffic Safety Association's requirements for a passenger vehicle. We were talking about Ford. This happened in Kentucky. This happened on Versailles Road, a vehicle that had a crash, and it was a church bus and all that. Ford has said all along, these things fit in a category that there is no standard for. This is basically a cargo van. That's what it was built for. As such, it doesn't have to have safety glass in the side windows. As such, it doesn't have to have rollover protection in the roof, and it doesn't have to have side impact beams in it because it's to haul carpet and cargo. Of course, the great idea was, hey, we can put seats in this thing, and we can put more seats in it. And we can put more seats in it. And finally, they got to the 15-passenger configuration. But people were saying, if any of you have ridden on the tailgate on a 1-ton truck, that's what this is. It's a 1-ton truck. And you know that the spring rate shakes your teeth so much that your fillings will fall out. So they said, this isn't worth a darn. It rides like a truck. No problem. So they take a leaf spring out in the rear, and they soften the springs. Now it rides great, but now it doesn't handle very well. So Ford said, that's okay. We don't have to follow any standards, and we don't have to test this vehicle as you do with cars. So all along they've said it's a safe vehicle, it's the driver's problem. Well, simultaneously on the East Coast and on the West Coast, Ford had 2 engineers testifying in federal court. And they said, yeah, we tested them, and yeah, we followed the rollover tests and all that, and they failed. But we don't have to publish that. And the reason we don't publish it is because they failed. The court said to Ford Motor Company, said, you guys are tested and you've lied in federal court, so we're going to uphold the verdict of $20 million, the biggest one that was ever done in Kentucky on a vehicle. The risk of rollover increases dramatically as the number of occupants go up from fewer than 5 to over 10. That's why we say, take the back seat out. Van rollover with 10 or more occupants is 3 times the rate. At 45 miles an hour making a J safety maneuver, you're almost guaranteed to wreck a 15-passenger van fully loaded. The shift in the center of gravity adds to the loss of control. Also, the soft suspension. We don't put loads on the roof anymore. Hopefully, nobody has roof racks. And we don't want anybody towing anything with a 15-passenger van loaded. But here's our little darlings. This is an 11-passenger, and this is a 15. Look at this difference between that center of that hub to that bumper and the center of that hub to that bumper. On the 11-passenger, it's 40 inches. On the 15-passenger, it's 5 feet. Of all of this weight put back over this fulcrum, it makes a big teeter-totter. This is basically where the floor pan is now. I mean, that's unloaded. That's the bottom of the vehicle, or in the passenger part. And this is about where the center of gravity is in an unloaded 15-passenger. You start putting people in it, and the center of gravity is up here. Most people are heaviest from their waist up. I'm kind of a little lower than that, but anyway. And all of this weight is moving. When we have a vessel, tractor trailer, a tanker, they have to put baffles in it to keep the liquid from swashing back and forth so they don't turn over. There's nothing in a 15-passenger van to keep people from swaying with however you're driving. And you know that that's going to happen because you can watch in the mirror and watch all the heads going back and forth. From here back is 1,050 pounds. And that's the teeter-totter. And remember the good ride we got? We've lessened the suspension rate in the back, which makes it squat down. And of course, this weight on this fulcrum lifts the front end up. So when you make that sudden maneuver, you've got very, very limited steering. You only have 1,200 pounds the rest of the way from the whole van, from here up. Figuring 150 pounds a person. And this is one of the main things that we need to make sure of. Everybody has to wear a seatbelt. Seatbelts won't keep you from having a wreck, but seatbelts will help keep you inside the vehicle. And remember also that in Kentucky, it's the state law, and you as the driver will be fined and cited for everybody that didn't wear a seatbelt. For you married guys, I always say, it's the only time we're ever in control. You got the key to the car, and you tell them, we ain't starting till everybody puts a seatbelt on. And if somebody says, I'm not going to ride in the seatbelt, then we're not going anywhere. Until they buckle up, you don't start the vehicle. You're the one that's going to be charged, and you're the one that's the driver. This is an accident that occurred here in Lexington of a loaded van. Anyway, they had a crash, and all of them wore seatbelts. One of the patients or one of the passengers was killed. Now, I said that it won't prevent deaths, perhaps, but it will help eliminate them. But I'll tell you what, when you're the passenger there and you're belted in, nothing is going to save your life. Look at all the windows broken out, all the material coming out. Some of you may have seen a video a couple months ago now, I think, here in Fayette County, one of the school buses turned over, and they had their monitor on in the back of the bus, just, to monitor kids and all. But it showed the kids flying inside of that bus as it rolled over a hill. And that's what everybody's going to do inside this vehicle that's not belted in. So you've got people that weigh 150 pounds or more running in and banging into each other. your heads are going to hit if you don't get thrown out of it. Pre-trip inspections, we talked about part of that, and I don't expect that you're going to go in and check the oil and check the power steering fluid and check all that stuff every time you drive, but you ought to look for fluids under the car. If you look down underneath of it and you see a puddle of water, and it's like clear water and you've been driving a while, you pretty well figure out that that's air conditioning, condensation, there's no problem. If it's yellow or greenish, you might have a short trip because it's probably going to be coolant fluid. If it's red, it's going to be brake fluid and you're going to have a real short trip. So you ought to look underneath of it and see if it's leaking fluids. Look for dents and scratches. I put that on there because simply if you got a big dent or scratch on the back corner of it, go around and look because somebody may have broken your taillights out. So now you don't have a taillight. People will hit you in the back because they can't see that you're signaling or your stoplight's on. But just look for the dents and scratches on it. Good idea to look at it when you pick it up in the motor pool so that when you bring it back, they don't say, aha, you wrecked the truck. No, it was already there before I took it. Check tires for low pressure. This is one of the biggest reasons that we have the crashes. All of a sudden, going down the road and they have a blowout. And remember, that's a J maneuver. And blowouts occur mainly because dry rotted tires or poor low pressure. Go to Harbor Freight or someplace and get one of these $2 tire gauges. And carry it with you. Somebody else will steal it, so put it in your pocket when you're driving the 15 passenger and check the tires. You should check them when you have a stop or a rest stop, and you should take those about every 3 or 4 hours. And also we talk about checking the tread depth of the tires. Since we all work at the university and are so highly paid, we all have at least a penny. Take the penny and stick it in the tread, and if Abe's ears are showing, you've got less than 3/30 seconds, the tires need to be changed, don't take the truck. I've had people tell me that they've gone to the motor pool and take something out, and the tires are wobbling, and they drive it anyway. Take it back and say, hey, there's something wrong with it. Change them then, and then look at them once a year. They look at it if you tell them something's wrong with it every time that you bring it back in. But they just drive it down, fuel it up, and it's ready for somebody else. Put on your seat belt. We've talked about that. Adjust seat and headrest, and I've got an airbag that's got a big smack of lipstick on it. It's the airbag kiss. That thing comes out with more force than you can imagine. And if you've got it less than 18 inches away from you, it's going to hit you in the head. If you're driving in the 10 and 2 position, as we used to teach people to drive, it's going to inflate and bring your hands back into your face, will break your arm, probably will break your cheeks. Many people have said, I'd have been all right in the crash if it hadn't been for that blankety-blank airbag. It does more damage than anything else, and they do hurt. Make sure that it's at least 18 inches away from you. And aim it down toward your chest instead of at your head. One of the things I teach in defensive driving class and in a AAA class is one of the better maneuvers now is to drive instead of the 10 and 2 or the 3 and 9 down at the 5 and 7 position, and you push and pull the steering wheel. Practicing, it works really great. And it's more stable if you are in a spin. It works better because you have something to hold on to. And it's a good position. Check the mirrors, the windows, and the dashboard. We talked about checking the mirrors. Now would be a real good time to find out how to turn on the windshield wipers, how to work the windshield washers, other than when you're going down the road at 50 miles an hour and you run into a rain squall and you need the windshield washers. Turning on the headlights and turning them off on the stick or whatever isn't going to be what you want to find out then. So find out before you start it where all the controls are. Start the engine, check the gauges. This is tips for driving all vehicles, but particularly for the 15 passengers. Avoid the sharp turn. Coming off of New Circle 4 on the inner loop going on to Versailles Road is a decreasing camber turn. Fully loaded at 40 miles an hour, you probably will roll it. Tractor trailers can't get through there. Another one is coming off of I-75 northbound at the Paris Pike exit. It's a decrease. You get halfway in the curve and then it gets steeper and the super elevations are more, and tractor trailers at least once a month roll there. There are areas here so you don't have to be going extremely fast to remember that sharp turns are going to turn you over. Don't drive tired. One of the things I tell folks, and geology guys brought it up, they'll leave here at dark 30. They'll go out and they'll scamper up and down the rocks, whatever it is geologists do, and they'll be all day long climbing on cliffs and doing whatever. Then they'll drive back 4 or 5 hours. DOT will not let a professional driver drive more than 10 hours a day. You have to stop and take at least 4-hour break to get away from the vehicle. So you take all of your time, it's duty time. You're driving, and then you're scampering up and down over the rocks, and then you're driving back. That's duty time. And if you're over 10 hours, you're wore out. So you should at least limit what you do during the day. Take a break, take a rest break, or have somebody else help you drive. We're in Kentucky. There ain't no way you're not going to drive in bad weather. There's no way you even know what the weather's going to be. It may snow today. Who knows? But if it is a snowstorm and you get caught, stop somewhere. Put up in a motel. Stay in the truck, do whatever, but just say, hey, I can't drive this thing in 14 inches of snow. And the snow will be gone even here in Kentucky, eventually. Rest stops every 2 hours are recommended. Depends on how long the trip is, of course. Drive during the day if possible. And require somebody to be awake in the front seat on long trips. What you need to do is you need to get the most irritating person that's in the van. One that can't keep their mouth shut. At any time you'd like to throw through the window and put them right there beside of you. Because they're going to keep you so irritated that you're going to stay awake. And make sure that they keep irritating. Remember the 4-second rule, not 1 car length for every 10 mile an hour, which it used to be when I was doing a Smith System class up in Massachusetts. It was 2 seconds for an automobile, not 4. But we were talking about the 2-second rule, and one of the smart aleck Yankees got up and said, yeah, if you count as slow as you guys from the South do, you'd be a mile behind them before you ever got to 2. You can go a little faster, but the whole deal is it's seconds. And you can't, as you get closer, speed up the count. You know, so it's like 1001, 1002. Braking concerns. A major problem is the difference between anti-locks and standard brakes. Not all of our 15-passenger vans have anti-lock brakes. You're used to driving anti-lock brakes if you've got a car that's 10 years old or younger. And anti-locks, you know, you just stomp on the brake pedal and hold on for dear life, and the computer does the modulation on the wheels and controls the skid. It won't ever lock it up. On standard brakes, if you do that and you don't do the modulation on the brake pad, you're going to be in a skid before you can even think about it. So you need to make sure, walk around to the back of it, you know, say ABS on the back of it. One of the other things, some of our older 15-passenger vans have ABS touched on the back, which is going to be real cool. You stomp on the brake, the back ones are going to keep going, but the front ones are locked up. Then you don't have any steering. So look at the truck and see what kind of braking it has. Skidding used to be one of the things we'd teach it. If the back end goes to the right, you steer it to the right, and if it goes to the left, you steer it to the left, and you know, whatever. All you need to do is steer the way you want to go. If you're driving down the road and the back end goes that way and you want to go that way, look that way, and that's all you got to do is steer that way, and it will straighten you right out. See how quick that works? Just look that way, and that's the way you're going to go. Don't look at a tree, because you probably hit it, but look the way you want to go. Well, we talked about whether you can't do anything about it other than hold up if it's really bad. And vans take a lot longer to stop, particularly if they're filled. And on wet pavement, they take a lot longer to stop, even with ABSs. The national pastime in Fayette County is, it ain't red, man, it's just purple. I told my boss about people running stoplights, and he said, oh, nobody runs them. I said, come out here on Rose Street in Maxwell where we are. It's demolition derby. There's 3 or 4 wrecks a week out there. People run red lights. 260,000 crashes a year because somebody runs a red light. 1,100 deaths. And one of the things about, I put this in there because I started talking with folks, what happens if you don't have stoplights? If the light is malfunctioning and it still has power, it'll blink orange or red. And if it's blinking red, that means you stop. You don't have the right of way. And that's always the case on secondary roads leading into 4-lane roads. It's always the case you never have the right of way. If it's blinking orange, you can proceed with caution. If it's blinking red, you got to stop. But going down a 4-lane highway, and all of a sudden the lights are blinking, don't stop in the middle of the 4-lane because you're bound to have a wreck. Learn how to look at the lights and don't run them. Construction zones are another problem. Old Chatty Cathy here just been irritating you for 4 hours and wearing you out. Anything is better than looking at the road and listening to them, so your mind starts to wander, and it's more interesting to see guys working or pieces of equipment than it is looking at the road. And a lot of times, it's this inattention that causes accidents in construction zones. Not only just to the guys that are working, but also rear-ending cars. Over 800 deaths annually, 37,000 injuries. And one of the problems, particularly when you're tired, even if it's not in a construction zone, is target fixation. You're tired and you're looking at something. A friend of mine, we don't know why, we assume that's what happened, was driving up I-64 and ran into a D9 dozer that was setting in the median. No skid marks, nothing. She just ran off of the road and had a fatal accident because she was tired and looking at something else. So target fixation, start looking at Chatty over here and fixate on them, I guess. Defensive driving theories, it's so neat that all it is drive with courtesy. You don't have to be the biggest, the baddest, the fastest one to get through the intersection. Let somebody else take a break. And particularly if they're doing squirrely things, get them in front of you. It's easier for them to be there than behind you. And the biggest thing is leave yourself an out, no matter what happens. One of the things in defensive driving that I would teach in the Smith system was every 2 or 3 seconds we would say, where will you go if something occurs? Where are you going to go? If that car stops, what will you do? Leave yourself an out. Am I going to go off of the road? Am I going to go that way? Am I going to hit them? But leave yourself an out. And remember, with a loaded 15-passenger van, if you go off of the road onto the berm, you probably are going to wreck. Because again, it's top heavy, this side's slowing down, and it's probably going to flip. So if you do run off the road, be sure that you slow down gradually and you keep this straight line until you come almost to a stop before you get back up on the road. Remember the J moves. We can't do those. This is one of the things that unfortunately has happened. I guess our life is just too busy. Everybody's dealing with aggressive road rage is a big deal. Avoid the eye contact and all that. It's been estimated by AAA that a good driver makes at least 3 major mistakes every 5 miles by either drifting into a lane, not signaling, or something. That's a good driver paying attention. This is one of the big things. Something happens. You don't need for the folks in the back of the van to be given Hail Mary signs and flagging helicopters and all this stuff. Put your hands in your pocket, cool it. And it's a shame to believe that there have been 218 fatalities just because somebody got mad. 12,000 injuries a year. City driving, we have the same problems, and particularly cities that you're not familiar with. The stop signs where they are. In Charleston, West Virginia, where I'm from, they have 2 places that the green light's on the top and the red light's on the bottom. My father-in-law was colorblind. He had a ball at that light. He changed the way he was going around traffic because he couldn't tell which one was which. But look at the stop signs, the stop lights, the yield signs. If they're behind trees, it's a big surprise. Bicyclists you have to worry about. Not everybody has a bicycle lane. Here on Euclid Avenue, the police stop everybody because they pull up the roads and they pull over in the bicycle lane to turn right on red. And you can't do it. It's a bicycle lane. You're not allowed to be in there. So you have to watch for bicyclists. And lane changes and signals in Kentucky, no longer can you use a hand signal. That's how come they put signals on motorcycles. If you're going to merge, the guy on the right usually has the right of way, but you can be right, dead right. Do the courtesy thing, look for blind spots. And we're talking about blind spots on the highway, but think about it when you're driving down the road and there's a big tractor trailer in front of you. And many of them have signs on the back of them that say, if you can't see me in my mirrors, I can't see you. And they absolutely can't. They can't see behind them. So if you're going to go around him or you're going to be there, pull up one side or the other so he can see you, so you can see him in the mirror. And one of my pet peeves with cruise control, folks will be going by 18-wheeler and it'll take them 20 miles to go by because I'm not going more than the 63 miles an hour. And the truck's going 63 miles an hour and it takes them from Grayson to Olive Hill to get around each other. Look on the road at all these big pieces of rubber that's tread from tractor trailer tires. They're the only ones that run recaps. When it comes off, it's going to hit in your windshield, and guess what? You're going to have another passenger, and they're going to be wearing a big black collar. Go on around the vehicles and make sure that you can get around him and he sees you. Rural drivers, you got to worry about walkers because there aren't any sidewalks. Deer and livestock. Best deer I killed 2 years ago. $7,000 damage to my vehicle. They hit a horse over at Homburg Place 4 weeks ago. They hit a deer out here at Commonwealth Stadium 2 years ago. There's animals and livestock everywhere. You need to look for those. And then the soft shoulders we talked about. If you're going to run off the road, you have to be extremely aware that you're in a very, very, very serious position. This is the time you get to get even with your front seat mate. When I was in the Army, one of the things that you had to do, two of you had to drive a vehicle, and the guy that was the road guide had to get out of the vehicle, get behind you, and make sure that you could back up or clear the area so that you could back up, and he was your spotter. Use Chatty Cathy or whoever. These people have been riding for however many hours you've been driving, not doing anything besides sleeping. Get one of them out of the truck and tell them to get behind you and help you back up. Put them on your side, the driver's side, at the rear, so you can look at them in the mirror, or so that you can roll down the window and holler at them and tell them, I can't see you. You'll see somebody going back like this. The driver's trying to find them, make sure that you can see them. How many times have you seen going down the interstate and all of a sudden the backup lights come on and you're going, you're not really going to do that, are you? Yeah. If you miss the ramp going, there'll be another turnaround in 10 miles or so. Life's complicated and we're all busy, but folks, take a couple minutes to eat your sandwich before you drive. You're going to spill it all over your shirt anyway, so stop and eat. Don't do the driving and eating bit. And this is one of the pet peeves, talking on the cell phone. Chatty over there can talk on the phone. Let somebody else do the call and let them talk on the phone. You need to pay attention to driving. And reading a paper or a map. So one of my favorite stories, well, I'll tell on him now, but since you're no longer with us, is one of the safety guys with the community college system. And I were going to Paducah. We were on the parkway, and I looked over after a couple of hours, and the van was going from one lane to the other, and I thought, well, that fool was going to sleep. So I finally pulled up beside him and blew the horn at him. And look, he was reading a book. When we got to where we were going, I said, what in the world were you doing? And he said, hey, man, that's the only time I get to read. I read 4 or 5 books a month. I said, you can't drive when you're paying attention. So don't be reading the map or a newspaper. Make up, you guys want to try it, that's good. I have lipstick all the way up over your ear probably, but, stop and do things. And basically what we're saying is you can't multitask. You need to really pay attention driving a 15-passenger van because of the handling problem. You really need to be paying attention to what you're doing. If you do have an accident, don't leave the scene. Report the accident to the local police. If it's on campus, the UK police. If it's in Lexington, Metro Police. If it's outside of Fayette County, call whoever the local police officers are and get the time and the date and, don't admit fault and all that. And this is most important. Immediately report the accident to your supervisor and be sure that your supervisor reports this. If you've got a cell phone, have somebody call Underwriter Safety and Claim. We need to make sure that it's reported immediately. Underwriter Safety and Claim is our third-party administrator. They'll gather information, suit stuff and all that. We had an accident in western Kentucky. Ag had it. We ran over another vehicle and had a fatality. And the driver of our vehicle was injured and in the hospital too. About 6 months later, a lawyer came up to risk management and said, I'm such and such and we're suing you for whatever. And we didn't even know about the accident. Nobody reported it. And you can imagine how the family felt that here we caused an accident that resulted in the death of a loved one and UK didn't even call them. So be sure that you do this and be sure that you go to the risk manager's webpage and you can pull down their accident reporting procedures and all that. There should be an accident report in each glove box of a vehicle. If not, download that one and put it in there. And it basically looks like that. And this is basically why we're doing this. One of the things we need to do is we need to make sure that everybody is familiar with the 15-passenger van and what it does. We don't want young people driving it. The university's requirement now is that you have to have 5 years driving experience. Now, that does not mean 21. My neighbor's daughter is a junior in college and doesn't drive. So her clock hadn't started ticking. It's 5 years of licensed driving. It may be 21. It may be 30. Students are not allowed to drive a 15-passenger van. Period. So even if they are 21 or 25. So this is the minimum. If they get a paycheck, they're an employee. But if they just are a grad student, no. And this is what it's all about. 65 miles an hour. And it was avoiding a stopped vehicle. If you watch this head on, remember me talking about the people swaying, and you can see, as Jerry Chitwood's people said, when you lose it. Right there. When it starts, nothing could bring it back. Everybody was injured seriously. 5 of them were killed. And that's when mostly the NC2A said we're not going to recommend that you use 15-passenger vans anymore. This is why we're having a class, and this is what we want to avoid. We can't do anything about the vehicle. We can't make it handle any better. We can't take you out and teach you how to drive it, because that can't be done. We just want you to be aware that the emergency maneuvers, the high center of gravity makes it a very difficult vehicle to work. You need to pay attention, and really pay attention when you're driving one of these things.